Hello, everybody. Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Nationals podcast. Joining us as he does most weeks, sometimes to give him a week off, it is Matt Weyrich of NBC Sports Washington. We are talking all things Nationals, trade deadline, who's going, who's staying. That's all anybody wants to talk about these days. And also an injury update as well. That's coming up next.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Once again, Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Nationals podcast, joined by Matt Weyrich, NBC Sports Washington. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day. Matt, we had some breaking injury news. What happened? Who is injured? Tell us.
Nobody's injured seriously. As I was walking over to sit down with Josh, banged my ankle into a table. We're okay. I think we'll officially list it as day-to-day, but no serious injuries to report as of now.
This is the first, I think, Locked On Nationals inflicted injury that we've had. Hopefully it's one of the last. I guess it'll probably happen again as long as the show goes along. But Matt, this, I was actually talking to somebody else earlier today, and just kind of, I feel like I need a break because the All-Star break wasn't really a break because all it was just talking about Juan Soto. As somebody who is in the print side of things, did you feel that too? Because it felt like that's all anybody wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I definitely feel like there's a little bit of Juan Soto trade talk fatigue going on over here. Just it's been pretty much all anyone's been asking about. Any radio stations calling in, it's about Soto. So every other story, it seems like I'm writing about Soto. So as we just trade deadline here, he's at the top of people's minds and at the top of the Nationals' mind because this situation here is going to dictate the next 3 years and beyond of the team's future. So a monumental decision on their hands for sure.
Yeah, and it's so I know you're familiar with the term SEO, right? It is a term that we use in the biz. It really is just kind of like talking about like words that come up a lot and how to make basically your content as marketable as possible. And, I also work on the college side. And so conference realignment for my Locked On Big 12 podcast does awesome numbers. And a lot of times you're just finding like 27 different ways to maybe say the same thing or to say something that's relatively the same thing. But like all we can say right now is we're kind of sitting here waiting. I mean, this is, you see a lot of reports out there and stuff. And Matt, I guess the one problem I have is like, and I think you and I talked about this before, but like there's no shams or woj for baseball. Like a lot of it's up to local reporting. I mean, Nationals fans last year, and Padres fans thought that Max Scherzer was going to be a Padre, and that came from one of the best in the business, Ken Rosenthal, over the Athletics. So it's almost like I have a real hesitance to kind of believe anything before it's, the official announcement or multiple people are reporting it. But, what is the latest that you're hearing and kind of where are you with this entire situation?
Yeah, honestly, the answer changes for every person you ask. From people I've talked to within the industry, it's kind of a 50-50 choice here of whether or not they end up trading him or sticking with him. Now, there's so many layers to this situation with the impending sale looming over this entire situation and the learners trying to decide whether Soto on the team is worth more than Soto not and what this means for their legacy and all sorts of other things. But I would say right now that the Nationals are open to any and all offers. They are offers of astronomical value, some of historic that we have never seen in the history of this sport. And they're being very patient with it. They're not looking to press to make a move with Soto, at least at this point. And it seems like even the most lofty of guesses at this point might not even hit the mark with how high the bidding could go. How many interested teams there are. There are a lot of teams that could use Juan Soto in the middle of the lineup. Heck, I would say all 30 could use Juan Soto in the middle of the lineup, the Nationals included. So that's what just makes the situation so unique. A player of Soto's age, caliber, and contract situation just does not hit the trade market. But that's exactly what we're looking at right now.
So, are you 50-50? Because that's where I don't talk to nearly as many people who are connected as you do. I'm 50-50 right now. Where are you on this deadline? Him getting traded.
I would say 50-50 at this point. I was, maybe if you had asked me last week, I would have said more like 30%, 20, maybe 20, 30. But certainly as we have kind of progressed here and the rumors have continued to swirl, it seems like this isn't just, the Nationals throwing it out there to, convince future potential buyers that Soto is worth a lot of money. I think any and all potential buyers know how much Soto is worth. It's just a question of, are they going to keep him now, or are they going to wait and see what the new owners do this offseason?
Do you think that the trade deadline itself would put pressure on a team to give the Nats an amazing offer? Or do you think time to consider what Juan Soto could do for a franchise, i.e. a team thinks about it and realizes, let's just say this offseason, there's new ownership. The Nats can't get a deal done, whoever it is. He's up for sale. Teams really think about it, put their best foot forward. Like, what do you think that both those situations net a similar package? Do you think maybe waiting till the offseason nets a better package? Because I'm 50-50 on whether or not he gets traded, but I still think waiting for the offseason is the right move. Like, some teams are putting together packages right now, but I think if you give a team 4, 5, 6 months, whatever it is, and be like, you know what? Let's go for it. Let's go for the entire thing. Let's make sure we're the team that gets Juan Soto. We're going to make them the offer they cannot refuse, the Godfather offer, the one they can't refuse. Do you think that the Godfather offer would more likely happen with time or at this deadline?
I think there's two sides to it. With this being the trade deadline and him getting whatever team gets Soto, getting 3 pennant races out of him as opposed to 2 if he were to be traded this offseason, that is valuable. So certainly I would expect the maximum possible offer the Nationals get right now to be better than the maximum possible offer they could get in the offseason.
So you think a team might trade for him and maybe not re-sign him?
Perhaps, yeah. It seems like there are teams such as like the Guardians and Rays that are interested in Soto. Yes, obviously, if you get Soto, you want to extend him. You want him to keep him in whatever team you are long term. But now that the price is going to be astronomical. And 3 pennant races, it's not like acquiring a rental. You are going to get him for a substantial amount of time where he can join up with whatever core you have and compete for multiple championships, whether that be now or this offseason. I think that if they were to wait to the offseason, teams are a little bit more open to roster reconstruction, and maybe they'd be more willing to move players at the major league level than they are right now. But you could also argue that teams at the deadline are more willing to be a bit hasty in their moves because they know they've already gotten about 60% of the way to a playoff berth. Why not push us over the edge here? A guy like AJ Preller, the GM of the Padres, who's known for pulling off big moves, seems exactly like the kind of guy who would convince himself to just go absolutely bonkers and all in on an offer for Soto. Now, whether or not a team like the Padres, especially with Mackenzie Gore getting hurt yesterday and landing on the 15-day IL today, being able to make a competitive offer, that remains to be seen. But certainly, they are not the only team that is willing to be aggressive.
Yeah, there's so many different theories. I'd never thought of a team. This morning, I was having a conversation striking off teams that wouldn't re-sign him. But you might be right. Could Juan Soto be on 3 different teams here in the next stretch? It's not out of the realm of possibility. But I feel like with what you're going to give up, you got to re-sign him. You have to, right? It's like I get your point, but man, you're going to be. Because here's the thing: the Nats aren't going to trade him. Like the Nets trade him, they're trading him like you have the right to get this player for the next 15 years. Like that's the package they want back, right? That's how they're treating it. They're not like, well, you might only get him for 2.5 years, so we're gonna give you, that kind of package. Like, no, this is the decade package that you have to give up. So it's hard. I guess for me, it's just hard to fathom a team trading for him and not re-signing him.
Well, as we're seeing, it's not so easy to re-sign Juan Soto. He has a high asking price. Scott Boras has pointed to Max Scherzer's contract with an AAV of $43.3 million as relevant in the Juan Soto negotiations.
Yeah, can we do this? Can we do this
Sure,
now? Can we just all right? So I saw John Hammond's reporting about this, and I love Mike Rizzo's response where he was like, "Do you want the Max Scherzer offer? Because we'll give you that." I love that. Like that's like the perfect response, in my opinion, to that. Because Max, think about Matt, think about this. Like, okay, that's 600. If you're gonna put that at the 14-year mark, which is what being floated around, right? At 43 million, I believe the math I did the other day was $605 million. Let me do it one more time. It's 14 times what is it? 43. $602 million. Nobody's giving a player that, right? Nobody is going to do that.
No, I mean, I think it's a bit lofty to tease that number out there. Alex Rodriguez is the kind of the comp that is getting brought up in this situation with a player that young hitting free agency. And he did set records for highest total guarantee and highest average annual value with that contract. So it appears that that's what Boris is intent on doing. And I mean, hey, if you're trying to create leverage, you start at the top and you work your way down. He's not going to bring up Garrett Cole's contract of 36 million, which is the highest AAV for any 10+ year deal. And then say, we're trying to beat that. That sets a floor. He's just trying to set a ceiling, and then maybe it can come down from there. Which, if I'm the Nationals, I think that 36 million is a number that, if you are the Nationals and you really want to convince fans that you are making every effort to sign Soto, the deal I would offer him would be 12 years, 456 million. That would be 38 million AAV. It would pass Mike Trout's record for highest total guarantee, and it would pass Cole's record for the highest AAV of any 10+ year deal. I think that is the kind of contract where if Soto were to walk away, there's nothing the Nationals could have done at that point. Because once you start, if you talk about a player, $44 million a year for a decade, I mean, that is a way to hamstring your team and not allow you to have any financial flexibility. That $6 million a year is the difference between, adding a couple of role players or, a potential 1-year deal for a bat to add into your lineup to kind of supplant your core. I mean, that every bit counts when you start getting up that high. And the Nationals, while not a bottom market team, they are a team that can spend. And I think that they would have the wherewithal to stomach a 38 million AAV. But I think once you start getting in the 40s, that gets a bit ludicrous.
All right, so mine was this. I started. This is kind of my starting one is 10 for 400. I think that's kind of where I'm at. It's a decade long. It's 40 million a year. Now, here's what I don't get. Like, I get the desire to set precedent is fantastic, but at some point, we have to be realistic about this. That's a decade long, right? And at this point, that would push him to 34. So actually, you could probably, if he's still a decent player, he'll still get another contract right after that. Like, that's $400 million over the course of a decade. I'd even extend it to maybe 11 for 440, and hell, I'd even go as far as to say, I'll push the envelope a little bit more than you, 12 for 480. I actually always thought it would end up between 450 and 500 was actually my thought. It's a bit further than you were pressing, but like, I think if it's, I think there's a lot of arguments, a lot of credence to the argument like that. That's probably not worth it, right? Now, as a business decision, I actually think it might be worth it, right? Like for what the player is, for what Juan Soto will be on the field, and in terms of marketing, jerseys, all that stuff the next decade. I mean, he'll probably end up being maybe not worth that much, but kind of in the ballpark, right? But I think 10 for 400 is kind of a good baseline, and maybe going by that, principle. Hey, 11 for 440. Do you see the Nats going over 500 million? I don't see that. I don't see it.
I don't think so. And, we're tossing out a lot of numbers here, but I think the offer that was reported 15 years, 440 million, I think that was kind of the Nationals trying to meet in the middle because they have a history of deferring money. And, they would love to kick some of that money down the road as they tried to do with Bryce Harper, who ultimately walked instead signed a record signing contract himself. They would have loved to do that, but it was clear that Soto wasn't going to accept any deferred money. So they say, okay, we just need to kick the AAV down a little bit and make this substantial offer that would be, record setting. It just isn't that AAV you're looking for. And ultimately, Soto wants his cake and to eat it too. So, he's earned that right as a superstar young player. And when he hits free agency, or if he hits free agency, he certainly will command more than what the Nationals offered him. This was not a market rate offer. Even despite the fact that it's record setting, it was not a market rate offer.
It's, it makes me just think about like, I wish baseball were more like basketball, because the basketball, I think the one thing basketball does really well is it pays guys at like their prime physical ages, right? I mean, I know baseball, there's a lot of proving that has to happen. And you might say, well, you can't pay 18-year-olds in basketball the same way you pay in baseball. But I mean, we give them darn near $10 million signing bonuses, right? I mean, look at Paulo Banchero's, I actually saw an article the other day that said Paulo Banchero might be potentially could be the first player to make $1 billion from just playing in his NBA career. And you think about that and it's like, why can't we do something like that with baseball? At least like, so you have multiple deals, because this is why it sucks. It's like, man, we're talking about a deal that would be a decade and a half. I mean, think about your life, actually right now, Matt, how old are you? Hope you don't mind me asking.
25.
25. I'm also 25 years old. So like, that is, which is like crazy. It's a crazy thing. Like this contract would span like 60% of our current lives. Like that, like that's what it would be. Like, if you just took the contract, like we'd be 10 years old if this contract started, it's whatever it is, however you want to do the math. Like sports contracts should not be that way. I remember, didn't Ilya Kovalchuk sign one that was like 16 years with the Devils? And it was complete, show. Like this, we should not be signing deals this long, because it's never a sound business thing. I just don't think it makes much sense overall to have contracts this long. And I kind of think the Stars I think they should make the money. It's fine. But like, why couldn't they do it on a pay scale that increases over time, 4 or 5 years at a time, if that makes sense?
My idea that I actually came up with back in the Kyler Murray situation when the A's had drafted him, but then he went away to go to the NFL, and who could have blamed him, because he got paid immediately and didn't have to ride buses and go through minor leagues, all that kind of stuff. But my idea was, why aren't contracts, we need to do away with service time. How about we just have contracts be for a set number of years when you sign out of high school or out of college? If you sign out of high school, it's an 8-year deal. That means that you're 18 years old and you're going to be a free agent at 26, which is considered to be the middle of your prime or early beginning of your prime. And if you're in college, then make it, 7 years. So that way you're becoming a free agent at 28 years old, which is still in the middle of your prime, but
Right.
It will then convince all of these top young stars coming out of high school that it's much better to sign with the team out of high school as opposed to go to college, because that should be MLB's goal, is to get the best young talent into the league as quickly as possible. So that's something where you would then be able to capitalize on your value a lot more. And we aren't seeing guys hitting free agency at 30, 31 years old. I mean, look at Jacob deGrom, who had such a slow start to his career and then just wasn't able to, he still had a nice contract. He's earned his money for sure. But, it's nothing
Right.
of the air of Steven Strasburg or Max Scherzer or David Price or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff comes down to timing, right? Like it's like it shouldn't be that way. It should come down to ability, not when you become a free agent. It's about if and how and that happens. So that's the thing I think all of this exposes. And once again, it's like, I mean, you and I have already said we're 50-50 on the Soto thing. All right, quick word from our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by BlueNile.com. You guys go to BlueNile.com today. When you guys do, you can find that forever piece. Baker with Sparkle jewelry from Blue Nile. And going on now, it's a Blue Nile anniversary sale. Save up to 40% on classic fine jewelry pieces and 25% on engagement ring settings. Plus, every order is insured. It ships free and arrives in a discreet packaging that will not give away what's inside. It's very key. Shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. I talked about Josh Bell with the Locked on Astros folks earlier. I said 95% he's going to get traded. It's probably be higher. I left the 5% just to be like, hey, anything can happen. Should I leave it at 1%? Should I go 99.1 now, Matt? Like, what do you think? What's your percentage?
Yeah, I would say 99.1 at this point.
What about 99.9 and then points? Are you? Would you?
I'm hesitant to go 100, but I'll go just below it.
Any variation of 99.9, you'll go
underneath, because like you said, anything can happen.
Right.
As Dr. Strange said.
Yeah.
So we'll heading into this deadline here. I think it's honestly likely that he's traded before the deadline. It seems like The consensus seems to be the Nationals are trying to get a Bell deal done before shifting gears and focusing on Soto's future. And we have seen Mike Rizzo act quickly before. Brad Hand was traded a couple of days out from the trade deadline last year. He acquired Kelvin Herrera from the Chicago White Sox. I can't even remember what year that was. I believe it was 2018, way back when. But that was about 2 months before the deadline. Sean Doolittle, Ryan Madsen, a month before the deadline. So we have seen Mike Rizzo work quickly and work a little bit ahead of the deadline there. And I think that's likely for Bell. I think that it's also likely we see Nelson Cruz and a couple of relievers, Carl Edwards Jr., Kyle Finnegan, and Steve Cishek, at least two of them probably.
Well,
probably
hold on, Matt, have you been listening to Locked On Nationals? Because I've been saying this. I think two of those three. I think they keep
I didn't
one.
catch that one. I didn't catch that one.
Well, I've been saying it for the last like 4 or 5. So I just want to know, folks, I'm not blowing smoke. The expert agrees. So I think it's likely like two of the three get traded. I'd kind of like to see them keep Kyle Finnegan just because the amount of team control that he's got. And like, once again, you and I have mentioned this. It's one less thing to worry about because they have so much to worry about. And also, like, this is completely selfish, but having at least one good bullpen arm sometimes can limit the length of games. So we appreciate that. You know, Kyle Finnegan normally is pretty good and likes to attack the zone. So we'd like Kyle Finnegan to remain. But yeah, I mean, I think Carl Edwards, I think he's gone, and I think Steve Cishek is gone. I think those two are the most likely to. Do you disagree about which two are most likely, or do you think it's those two?
I think that Edwards Jr. is probably more likely than Finnegan to go. He does have an extra year of control. So if you either keep Finnegan or Edwards Jr., one of them will be back at least for next season, as you mentioned.
And that's because
Finnegan
of the deal that Carl Edwards signed. It was a minor league deal.
No, it was actually because he went to Rochester to begin the year, and he was brought up 1 day too late for service time. So because of his service time requirements, I talked to him about that, and he confirmed that was the case and said, I don't blame the Nationals at all. They were the only team to make an offer to me. They believed in me. Whatever they want me to do, I want to do it, whether that be as a bullpen arm or whether that be as a trade chip. I'm there. I did write a story about that. So if you want to look
I remember reading that. I've mentioned that a bunch. Yeah. What a guy. I mean, like, love that. I mean, he's so willing for everything. Steve Cishek is a veteran. I think they kind of signed him with the intent, right?
I will say that I think it's also likely that one of these guys gets attached to Josh Bell in a trade. And trade them together.
So I've been saying this too, because Matt, it makes too much sense. It's like, look, man, you might be walking into a Walmart. All right, you can buy a lot of stuff at a Walmart. Don't have to go to Sam's Club too. Like, get all your shopping done in one place, right? There's no reason to go more than one place. And here's the thing. Everybody needs a reliever. Now, the Astros folks want a left-hander, and the Nats don't really have those. But, I mean, Carl Edwards, you can't go wrong with – I think Carl Edwards, to me, has been awesome this year. Every single time he has a bad outing, he responds with, like, 7 straight good outings. So, I think he's the best one they have right now. I'm not sure what your feelings are.
And he's just got that veteran experience, too. He's been around
he won
a while.
World Series.
Yep, and he throws hard, which is always something you like to see. His walk rate's a little high this year. But his velocity, despite the injuries he's had over the last few years, still at the exact same place it's been. He also is just striking out guys at a solid rate. So I think overall, he presents a great option for contending teams, and might be enough if paired with Josh Bell since he does have 2 years of control, to then land the Nationals a top 100 prospect, which has been tough in recent seasons. It's been tough to get a top 100 player for a rental, but I think if you get one of these guys thrown in there, I think it might be possible.
Yeah, I was telling the Astros folks they might give it a whirl to re-sign a Josh Bell. I know they're not loving the Yuli Gurriel experience right now, so it might be worth it trying to get Josh Bell under contract. All right, let's go a little off menu. What do you got for guys that we might not see it coming, but you could see them getting traded, right? Because we're hearing. I mean, I think the big three we're hearing a lot about. Well, actually, let's put Soto aside here. I mean, I think we're hearing Cruz, Bell, and then one of the relievers, right? Let's go off menu. What else do you think? Who else could you see getting moved? Cesar Hernandez, veteran, Yadiel Hernandez as a kind of veteran, but not really a veteran at 34 with a lot of team control. And we saw him at the opposite of field, or I think it was opposite field home run last night. Like who do you think's kind of a little off the radar type piece that you could see the Nats moving?
Yeah, I think that Cesar Hernandez, if the Nationals can get any takers, that he would certainly be out the door as on an expiring contract. Yadiel Hernandez makes sense as somebody whose trade value will likely diminish as the years go on, given that he's 34 years old. He does have lots of team control, but especially if the Nationals trade Soto, they're not going to have any kind of need for Yadiel Hernandez in the years to come. And also, I think they'd like to get that left field spot opened up, maybe for a bit more Lane Thomas time, or even maybe to see a guy like Donovan Casey or Josh Palacios, an acquisition they made this year, who's been raking down in AAA, as somebody that we might see in the major league level by the end of this year. So certainly, I think Hernandez is someone that they would entertain trade offers for, as is Eric Fedde. Fedde is an interesting case, being that he does have a few years of control, but he's out of minor league options. So the Nationals cannot send him down. If they do have anybody that they want to bring up right now, their starting rotation is a bit full. They could move Paolo Espino to the bullpen, of course. But if they want to bring up guys like Cade Cavalli or Colt Henry towards the end of the season, they may need a roster spot open or two. Trading Eric Fedde could do that. Whether or not they get much interest in him remains to be seen. But I think he makes sense as a guy who could be a number 5 starter, somebody you shift to the bullpen come playoff time, just somebody to eat innings for you down the stretch. And maybe just give you, 5 innings of 3-run ball. I think you would take that from Eric Fedde every day of the week. So that's a couple of names to keep an eye on there, as well as Victor Robles. We've been seeing Robles being in the starting lineup a lot recently. They're trying him out in that leadoff spot again. He's getting yet another chance to be the Nationals leadoff man. Hasn't really been hitting at all, save for that 1 home run off of Madison Bumgarner. He really has not done much with the bat, but certainly still provides some value with the glove. And maybe another team thinks that they can fix him and turn him into the player he was supposed to be when he was a 5-tool prospect.
Can we do so let's talk about the clown nose thing real fast. So, I thought Bumgarner's comments were dumb. I thought I enjoyed the clown nose thing. I will say, your team is 30 games under 500. You've sucked all year, and you're down 7-2. So I'm not sure I'm 110% on with the admiring the home run. Although everything that came after it was relatively entertaining. Where are you on that?
I think that, as Robles said, if you don't want a guy celebrating a home run off of you, don't give up the home run. At the end of the day, yes, it wasn't a great look.
I get it, but you're down 7-2. I mean, guys.
But at the same time, in this national season, man, you got to take your wins where you can get them. And for Robles, this was one of those situations where he just wanted to take an extra second. And it adds to the highlights. It makes the footage more marketable. Why not? At the end of the day, was it really going to affect Bumgarner if he takes 2 extra seconds trotting around the diamond? No. But, as he said, he's the grumpy old man enforcing the unwritten rules here. And that's just, he's never going to change. That's Madison Bumgarner for you.
Yeah, but are you going to dunk on somebody and get in their face if your team's down 25? Because that's kind of.
But is he getting in the guy's face? I mean.
Oh yeah, but that's kind of he's. I mean,
he's not pointing at him and saying get that pitch out of here.
He is perceived to be one of the faster players in the team.
But you'll see in a blowout, you'll see a guy hit a 3 and he'll still do the 3 fingers to the forehead.
Yeah,
as long as he's not turning around and doing it to the bench or stomping over a guy on the ground.
It's not really the celebration. I think it's a bit of it's the self-awareness part of it. For me, that's what it is. Because it's once again, I'm fine with celebrating. I'm pimping home runs, do whatever you want, swing 3-0, all that kind of stuff, up a million. But when you're down and your team really sucks and you really have not been very good. I get why you're admiring it, but there is a part of me it's dude, it's 7-2. You know what I mean? So. I don't know. It's a difference in philosophies on that. It's fine. I'm not anti-fun. I promise. I'm not anti-fun.
No. I'm just in the position of I wouldn't get mad at anyone for doing it. I'm not agreeing. I'm not saying it's a great look. I just what's there to get angry about?
Right. Yeah, I thought Madison Bumgarner was being ridiculous. Also, I appreciate a baseball reference making his primary photo. I'm not sure if it still is anymore.
It is, and if you go to the Nationals team page, did you know that Victor Robles is 3rd on the team in WAR? That is a hilarious stat to me.
No way.
Yep. And so his picture is right there. It goes Soto, Bell, Clown, face Robles is the 3 photos you first see when you go to the Nationals page. Pretty
that is more
on
of an
point for the
indictment of the
season.
Nats than it is a positive for Victor Robles this year, I believe.
Yep.
All right, Matt, are you working on anything in particular right now? Or they just have you sitting there at the desk saying, whenever the stuff comes across the wire, get typing?
We are doing all the preparations for the trade deadline here. So I've got a bunch of stories in the queue coming out this week, looking ahead at potential trade chips, at players who may be playing their last few games in a Nationals uniform. And then, of course, I'll be at Nationals Park pretty much all week next week, getting reactions, talking to Mike Rizzo, Dave Martinez, all that kind of stuff. So definitely go over to NBCSportsWashington.com and check out all of my work over there.
Do you have like several different variations of Soto trade story written?
I will say I had a month ago, I wrote a Juan Soto extension pre-write. That one has been
no!
thoroughly
You're gonna be hitting the trash can icon on that one,
Yep.
or who knows? I might be saying this now, and you and I might be laughing this summer when it's like.
And before anyone says I jinxed it, I mean, this is just par for the course for the industry. We do these kinds of things.
Yeah,
so,
this is
I've got plenty of trash stories over the years that never made it to the site for storylines that never happened. So
you guys, for all we know, Matt might have like the Ryan Zimmerman unretires piece like written in the queue. It's just sitting there, so that it could be there. All right, Matt, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much, man.
Absolutely, anytime, Josh.